Well, good day to you. It is May the 21st, and I hope wherever you are, you're having a fantastic day. My name is Gary Willing. I want to welcome everyone to Search for Signs and point out if you're new and just take a few seconds of your day and remind you again if you've heard these videos and you haven't done it yet. If you want to know more about who and what Maitreya is, you want to know more about the priorities of the teacher, why these masters here at this time, what does it mean for humanity that they are here and that kind of thing, or even if you want to see if there's any truth to it, the best thing to do is to read more about them. I've included links in the description portion of every one of these videos that take you to websites that give you really good information, background information, further information about this to help you see if there's any truth to it for yourself. So that's why I put it in there. Hopefully you'll take the time to do it. Now, I'm just spitballing here. You do this if you want to. You can always listen to another video that I put up. I put up a lot of them where we talk about Maitreya and the Masters of Wisdom. But if you want to get caught up in terms of the basic background information, read more about it for yourself. Now, but if you also want to dive into the deep end of the pool and join the discussion, you can also post comments. You can post your questions in the comments section. You can even email me at searchforsigns@mail.com. And I want to thank Tina Boric, Jaime, and James Wambidi. Thank you, everybody, for your comments. Now, I didn't have anything really to go on in terms of the comments, and I had no questions that came my way. So I wanted to talk about something that I've been watching in the news over the past few weeks and trying to cipher through the narrative that's going on in the media and try to get down to really what's going on geopolitically around the world. It involves the United States, of course, because we're pretty much involved in everything geopolitically in the world. But what does it really mean? And, I'm not claiming to be an expert on this, and I'm not putting this video up to kind of show off how much knowledge I think I know about this. It's truly to help you if you have any uncertainty about the future economically, based on what you're hearing, to help quell some of the fear. That's it. And then you can do with this information with what you want. But this is really just my thoughts on what I've been watching geopolitically in the world. And so if you've been watching the news, I'm sure you're aware that a lot of the nations are not even threatening to do this anymore. They are getting off of what's called the petrodollar. If you don't know really what the petrodollar is, I'm sure most of you guys know what the petrodollar is and what it was about and when it was started and what the purpose of it was. But from what I understand, after the United States got off the gold standard, and this was right around the time that yours truly was a wee little child, and I'm 50-something years old, so it's been around for a while. The United States devised this ingenious yet very corruptible and evil plan, but it was ingenious, to keep their economy going, keep people's faith in the dollar and that kind of stuff. And what they did was, and I don't know really, and I've never really read how they were able to pull this off and convince all these countries to do it, but they convinced every country in the world that if you want oil, you have to use the US dollar. You couldn't use your own currency, you couldn't use somebody else's currency, you couldn't use gold, you couldn't use anything like that. You had to use the US dollar to buy oil, and every country needs oil, right? So, for the past 50 years, if, let's say, Mexico or England wanted to buy oil from Saudi Arabia, they would have to convert the British pound to US dollars. US dollars would buy the oil, they would get the oil, and then the Saudi Arabian government would have more dollars. So each country doesn't have the US dollar as their national currency. They have their own currency. So what did it mean for the dollar? For one thing, it created this huge velocity in dollars. There was just trillions of dollars going back and forth on an annual basis for decades. And it created, people needed it, they knew they could use it, and it gave the United States dollar and people a lot of faith in the US dollar, even though it wasn't backed by a tangible asset like gold. The second thing it did was it kept countries that perhaps didn't like the policies of the United States going after the United States geopolitically, perhaps, if not militarily. It kept them at bay because if the United States went down, they would go down economically. So it kind of created this safety cushion between countries and like the United States and other countries. China being a classic example of this. And then the third thing that I just learned about recently was each of these countries needed to convert the dollar back to their own currency in order to use it in their country. The only way to do that was to reinvest the dollars that they made off of the sale of oil into the United States stock market. That was the only way they could do it, or invest it in real estate or whatever like this. And it created this economic boom pretty much over the last 50 or so years in the United States. The United States has been rolling in the dough. So that's really the main impetus behind it. So what people are saying now is because these countries are not threatening to get off the petrodollar like they've done for a long time. A lot of time they were just threatening to do it. Now they're actually doing it. and there's a reason why they're doing it. And I'm going to get into that a little bit in just a second. But it is going to lead to a catastrophic collapse of the U.S. dollar, is what people are predicting. Now, if you know anything about this information, Maitreya has been saying for decades that the economies of the world are going to collapse, and it is inevitable. It doesn't matter whether we get off the petrodollar or not, it's going to collapse because the economies of the world, and economically, the structures that are put in place do not meet the needs of the people. And the world is waiting for the time when we can come up with a new way of having an economy where we can still get things done, we can still buy things, but it's not at the expense of everybody for the, and at the benefit of the very few. And that's really where we're at. Now, what triggered all this, from what my limited understanding of it is that when Russia invaded Ukraine, the United States did not want to go head-to-head militarily with Russia because they knew that would be disastrous for not only Russia, but for us and the world as a whole, because they have more nuclear weapons than we do. So don't want to do that. So what they first did was they imposed sanctions on Russia. This is what we do every time we don't like a country. We impose sanctions on them, try to hurt them economically, to get the people in that country to get fed up with the situation and outs their leader, basically, I think is the intention behind it. We did that. The other thing we did is we went in and seized all the dollars that Russia had in bank accounts in reserve. They thought it was their money. We went in and took it without any due process or anything. They just went and took it. And so, of course, it ticked off Putin and Russia, but it also created this, I think, a very legitimate concern from every other country that had to have dollars stored in reserve to buy oil. They realized that that wasn't really their money. They had no control over it, and that the United States could go in at any moment that they didn't want that country to do what they were doing, to go in there and take it. So they pretty much all just said, well, screw it, we ain't going to use the petrodollar anymore. Now, throughout the last few decades, when a single country tried to get off of the petrodollar, like Iraq, we went into Iraq, took Saddam Hussein out, instituted a puppet regime in there to kind of go along with what we want. Then if you look at what happened with Libya, Gaddafi had this wonderful idea to get off the petrodollar, didn't have a lot of agreement with other countries. They probably wanted to do it too, but nobody was really willing to take that step to do it. He went on his own, tried to do it. Guess what happened to Gaddafi? Is he still in power? No, he's not even alive anymore. The United States took him out. But because China and countries like China and Russia and India and Brazil and some European countries, and I even read online that pretty much every Southeastern Asian country, from the Philippines to Thailand to Cambodia to Malaysia and others, are saying we're not going to use the petrodollar either. And I'm sure more and more countries are going to fall in line with this. It is going to be an adjustment, for lack of a better word, for people here in the United States and for our global positioning as a global superpower. I do ultimately think this is the best thing that the world could do, is to basically eliminate the American dominance that we've had over the world for the last 70 years, since the end of World War II. I think it's the beginning of the end of that. It frightens the hell out of people who are all about America, think America should continue on in the ways that it's doing. It's very hopeful and encouraging for people such as myself who even live in the United States, who do not see that a dominant bully of a country like the United States is the best thing for the world. I always say this, I'm not interested in the right politics or left politics, Republicans or Democrats, the United States or any other country. I'm only interested in the future of humanity. Like Maitreya said, keep your eyes on the prize, and the prize is humanity. That's the only thing I'm concerned about. And I know that the future of humanity is there for the taking. We just have to make some changes today. And the change is we have to stop doing things the way that we were doing and start to cooperate with one another. And I'm thinking this could be the beginning of that. Of course, the narrative on the media, they're not saying that. they're thinking this is an act of war. Some are saying this is an act of war that China and Russia are doing on the United States. They don't trust these meetings because the United States hasn't even been invited to these summits. It's all been them, and they're all agreeing to do this. So anyway, I'm sure those countries have their selfish motives too. I don't think it's all ulterior motives that they're doing, or altruistic motives, that the reason why they're doing this. But I do think ultimately a world where it's not being dominated and bullied by the United States is a good thing eventually. So anyway, will it be tough in the beginning? It might, and it might hurt the US dollar, and it might make life harder for people in the United States, but we've had it pretty good, as they say, had a good run, had to close out sometime. I think this is the closing out of the United States' dominance over the world. But what did Benjamin Creme's master say in an article almost 20 years ago that I think is coming to pass today? Is he said in the article America Adrift that the United States will find that the world will not stand still with or without American cooperation. The nations will proceed as best they can to deal with the many ecological and social problems which beset us, and which so urgently must be addressed. America will find itself left behind and ignored, and only then will it be prepared to, quote-unquote, lead the way. So he also said that once these other nations start tackling some of the problems like the environment and economic divisions and so forth, eventually, like he said, they're going to just rush to the front of the line and have that banner of peace and justice and say, see, we're leading the way, because the United States always wants to be first to to finish the race. But it's not a race like that of competition. It should be about the human race. And that's really the point of my discussion and my thoughts on this today. And I really do thank everybody for your comments. I love you guys. If you have anything you want to say, if you agree or disagree with what I'm saying, I'm sure a lot of people are going to disagree with what I had to say right here, but I wanted to talk about it. I think it's an important thing to talk about because according to the masters, unity and oneness are the most important things that we should be doing. We should be looking at, working towards individually, collectively, as a humanity, and that kind of thing. So that's why I'm talking about this, because I think the end of the American dominance will be the start of a global cooperation. That's what I think, even though the media in the United States would never tell you that. But anyway, I love you guys. You guys have a great day. Look forward to talking to you guys again real soon. Remember to take action and help SOP save our planet. Thanks for listening, and we look forward to talking to you again in future videos.